There we go. Well, the meeting of the Franklin County Board of County Commissioners, Wednesday, April 6, 2022. Janet, roll call.
Commissioner Stottlemyre.
Present.
Commissioner Harris.
Present.
Chair Dunn.
Present.
Vice Chair Dickinson. Commissioner Waymire.
Present. Please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Say stand for the invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have anybody today? There we go. Come on up.
Good morning, County Commissioners. Thank you for having me once again. Hey, how about the KU Jayhawks?
Hey.
One of my former students, I was his Bible teacher his senior year in high school, was Mitch Lightfoot. He's the backup center for KU. And 6 years ago, I had the opportunity of walking him through that process and being a part of that team who helped him to pray and decide, hey, where's he going to commit to school? So 6 years later, it's kind of cool to see the back end of that. He committed to Kansas, and now he won a national championship. I was texting him the other day and just saying congratulations. And despite all of his success and being on TV, I think one of the greatest qualities about him is that he was still asking how I was doing, how my family was doing. With the title that he's been given, and he's well known, he still cares about those beneath him, so to speak. And one thing that I love about Mitch is just his heart for people and his heart to serve. That's the very nature of what you do here for us in the community. The last couple of months, I've just been praying for our county commissioners in a different way, because truly, I understand in a position of leadership the amount of emails that you have to answer and phone calls and meetings at the coffee shop and all of those things. So even Jesus said that he didn't come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. So when it comes to service, you all are the ones putting forth the time, and I just want to emphasize that truly, a real servant isn't one who stands on people, but rather a real servant is the one who lifts the people up, right? And if only the higher levels of leadership in our country would see it as the same way. So thank you for what you do for our community, and if we could just bow our heart and bow our heads in prayer, that'd be awesome. Lord, I thank you that above all, you love us, that you value us. There's no subjective value on our life, but there's objective, inherent value on our life, and that's because you say so. Thank you for all the work that's being put forth here. Thank you for this meeting. Thank you for the service to the people of Franklin County. We pray for continued wisdom and insight with issues moving forward. I pray that in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you all.
Thank you. Correspondence, Derek.
Yeah, thanks, Roy. We have our financial advisor, David Arterberry, here this morning to talk with you about just a couple of different issues. So, okay. David, if you want to come up.
Thank you.
You bet.
Welcome.
Good morning. I've got a couple of handouts here for you. Take a copy myself and then hand out the rest. They look a lot alike, but they are different. Let's see here. As Derek mentioned, I'm here to talk about a couple of things related to the county's debt, and particularly related to possibly refinancing or paying off early some of the county's debt. Both of these discussion topics aren't things that require any action by the commission today. They're more just informative. But if you would want to get the ball rolling on one of these things, that is something that we could do today if you wanted to, but it's optional. There's a couple of reports. They look a lot alike, but if you look at the one called Bond Refinancing Analysis, that's what I was going to focus on first. And basically what this has to do with, if you might recall a couple of years ago, the county refinanced an outstanding Public Building Commission bond issue and achieved some savings. I think it was somewhere around $250,000 or savings or so. There are two other Public Building Commission bond issues that the county has that become callable later this year and would be candidates to refinance again for the first time. And I think one of the bonds that's outstanding, they were both done in 2014. One was for courthouse HVAC projects, and the other bond issue was done for the Justice Center. Initially, when we noticed that these bonds were callable this year, we met with Derek and Janet, and we ran some calculations, and it looked like there was, somewhere approaching $200,000 of savings. So we were kind of excited by that. That was back in, I think, November or December of last year. Since those bonds can't be refinanced until no sooner than June of this year, that's a federal tax code rule, we just said, okay, well, that's great. We're just going to wait a little bit, and we'll come back to the commission when it's time to consider the refinancing. Unfortunately, since that time, as you might be aware, interest rates have increased. Increasing interest rates cause a refinancing to reduce the amount of savings available to you. So when we updated the numbers back in March, the savings dropped from close to $200,000 down to about $75,000. Obviously, that's a big drop. Still, we thought at a level of savings of $75,000, it was worth mentioning to the commission to see if you'd want to proceed. No savings is probably better than, or some savings is probably better than no savings at all. We updated the numbers a week or so after that, and the savings dropped to about $68,000. Again, we thought, well, we might as well just talk to the commission about it. Unfortunately, when I updated the interest rates again yesterday, the savings now dropped to about $12,000 or $13,000. And that's what these numbers illustrate. I just want to spend just a minute going through them, if you don't mind. On page 1 and 2 of the report, after the table of contents, you'll see the two outstanding bond issues. The bond issue on page 2 should be labeled Series 2014B, but both bond issues go out to 2029, and they carry an average rate on them of about 3.53%. On page 3, you can see what a new bond issue might look like, and this is based on current interest rates. And what you see there is the effective all-in borrowing cost is now 3.22. So really the reduction in the interest rate would only be about, 0.2 of a percentage point or so. Not a real big drop. Earlier this year, when we ran the numbers last year, that reduction in the interest rate was more like 1.25%. So the bump up we've had, unfortunately, has caused the savings to pretty much disappear. And on that page 4 there, you can see what that savings would look like if you refinance those two bond issues right now. So, I wish I could come in here and show you, I wish I could show you the $200,000 of savings, but unfortunately, just with the way the market has moved, the savings has been, pretty much reduced to nothing at this point. So if there's not any particular action that you need to take about refinancing the bonds right now, if you want to, I would suggest that you just let me continue to monitor the rates, and if savings does increase, I can return to you and maybe get the ball rolling on refinancing at that time. But just wanted to kind of make you aware of it. And I don't know, Derek and Janet, if you had any input on it either, but it's, again, market conditions just have changed to the point that the savings has disappeared. So.
And I would add that we stay in pretty consistent contact with David. I mean, obviously, if we could have refied these back in December when we had this discussion, and locked in that $200,000 savings, we would have done that, but we couldn't. And this is just where the market has turned. But we have enough contact with him that if things go the other direction, we'll absolutely be in front of you with a recommendation. So.
It doesn't look like that's gonna happen.
No, I know interest rates have spiked up quite a bit. They seem to have, knock on wood, settled down a little bit over the last 2 weeks or so. It seemed like up until that time, it seemed like pretty much every week rates were bumping up again and again and again. I think first it had to do with inflation, and it had to do with geopolitical issues. But I think maybe we've reached some stability here. Where the market has already sort of anticipated a number of rate hikes by the Federal Reserve, and that hopefully that's baked into the numbers. Now, maybe things will change, but I don't know going forward if there's a lot of people that think rates are going to go back down anytime real soon. So, the next report that I gave to you, if you can't tell, it's run on the same software. It's another bond-related item, and this is something that is just more of an idea that the county could pursue if they want to, but I don't think it's anything at this point where we're saying, oh yeah, you need to do this. But when I'm talking to Derek and Janet, one of the things that we wanted to look at is, would there be a way for the county to free up some money under its current, tax rate structure to allow you to increase expenditures for other purposes in the future, particularly if you wanted to possibly increase payroll a little bit. So what the idea here would be is, if you have some money on hand, possibly some federal dollars that you might have received through, COVID distributions from the federal government, if you were to take some of that money and set it aside and use it to pay off outstanding debt, what benefit could you receive from doing something like that? So what I did, and to try to keep matters fairly simple, is I just looked at one of your old bond issues, your 2019 bonds. That was the second set of bonds that were issued for improvements out at the new industrial park. And so I said, okay, well, how much would it take for you to pay off that bond issue? Now, that bond issue, you can't immediately call it. So what you would need to do is you'd need to set that money aside into an escrow account. And that escrow account would be invested in U.S. Treasury securities, and those Treasury securities would be timed so that they made the payments on those old bonds. It would make the payments on them all the way up until their first call date, and then that escrow would generate money to pay off and call those bonds early. And it's, in the bond parlance, it's called a defeasance escrow. You'd create an escrow that would be irrevocably pledged towards paying off those old bonds. And once that escrow is set up, those bonds would be considered legally defeased, and they would no longer be the responsibility for the county to pay. They'd be paid from that escrow account. And the software that we have does all of those calculations, and I just kind of wanted to show you what that might look like. On page number 1 here, on the right-hand side of the page, that table, you can see the scheduled debt service payments on the 2019 bonds. It's a little bit lower in the first few years, but then it goes up to about $235,000, $240,000 per year. The total bond payments on that issue, it's that number that's kind of in the orangish yellow color there at the bottom, $3.695 million. So that's how much is due on those bonds if they run to their maturity date. Now, if we created an escrow to pay that bond off, that escrow would make the payments on those bonds up until their call date, and then it would call those bonds on the call date. Now, On the left-hand side of the page here, under the heading Escrow Disbursements, you'll see what sort of payments that escrow would have to spin off. In that debt service to DS to call column is the payments that would need to come out of that escrow. Those total up to about $3,334,000. That's the green box. So that escrow needs to generate $3,334,000. The question then would be, okay, well, if it's going to have to generate $3.3 million, how much needs to go into that escrow? Because that escrow will be invested and it will earn money. The amount that would need to go into the escrow, if you look over there on page 2, highlighted in yellow, you'll see the estimated cost of that escrow, and that's $2.913 million. So what that's saying is if you put that $2.913 million into the escrow, you can buy those securities and you can defease that old bond issue. So an upfront payment of $2.9 million will defease a total and pay off and eliminate $3.695 million in future debt payments. So that would then allow the county to completely eliminate the scheduled debt service payments on those 2019 bonds. So back again on page 1 here, on the far right-hand column, all of those, that fiscal total, all those payments would be gone if you were to create this escrow for $2.9 million.
So based on your projections here, then, just to put it publicly on the record, in 23, it looks like we'd free up a little over $93,000 based on this.
Right.
But then in 24, that jumps up to almost $240,000, where it would remain for the duration of the.
Right. So the county's obligation to make those payments you described would be gone if you were to do something like this. And in total, what you'd end up saving, it's over there on page 4. Underneath the yellow box, you see the gross savings by doing this would be about $782,000 for taxpayers over the remaining life of the bond issue.
So we've talked about potentially doing this to free up room under our mill levy to do other things, but it's becomes more compelling when you see we could save almost $800,000 over the life of the bonds. So,
Freed up some cash.
yeah. And so obviously this is yet another potential use of ARPA funds. I will tell you, you cannot use ARPA funds to directly pay off debt, but we could use ARPA funds for like our payroll. And then we would take the money that we would have used for payroll and we could do this. So it's easily something we could do. We're not asking for a decision from you today. David was coming down and we wanted him to, he'd be happy to come down again, I would assume. I don't want to speak for you, if this is something that we seriously want to consider. And
I mentioned a minute ago, in order to keep things simple, I just looked at this one bond issue. And that's just because it makes it easier if I can just look at a single bond issue. But you could even do something like, if you wanted to, let's say you say, okay, well, we don't want to put $2.9 million in the escrow. We only want to put, let's say, $1.5 million. What we could do is we could create an escrow that, instead of paying off the whole bond issue, would just pay off part of it. So that savings, instead of being, $238,000 a year, being in 2024, it might be if you put in half of that amount, if you put in $1.5 million instead of $3 million, maybe that number would drop to, $125,000 or $120,000 of savings per year. So there's ways to create escrows that could, for less than that $2.9 million, that could still generate savings. It just wouldn't be as much.
Yeah, little bit of a balance left when we did Proximity Park.
We do.
Did that get used for other road projects or is it still there?
No, believe it has to be used for that project that we assigned it to.
Yeah, or it could pay off debt early if you don't use it for that purpose.
That balance?
I don't know, but I'd be happy to get that for you.
Just thinking, obviously it's nice to have options at Proximity Park, but since that money is kind of for such a narrow purpose, that might be thought to use that money and then keep our money that's more broadly.
Well, we would be happy to work with David on looking at other bond issues and just coming back with a menu of options, or at least for discussion, just to see. I mean, we received about $5.2 million in ARPA funds, committed just over $300,000 for premium pay. I believe we've committed almost $100,000 more for a jail transport van, and then, correct me if I'm wrong, Janet, but I don't believe we've committed any other funds, so we're probably sitting
You
around.
guys have discussed committing some of those for like Hope House and for possibly the Franklin County Agricultural Society and services for the elderly for their small projects, but that wouldn't total more than like 50,000. So
We'd be in the ballpark of 4.8 million or so ARPA funds still unallocated. And granted, we haven't had the study session yet where we kind of walk through all the options, but just while David is here, like 4.8 is roughly, I think, what we're looking at. And this would be, 2.9 committed into that escrow.
I like that we're taking kind of found money, one-time money, and using it for pretty boring, responsible things. Like,
Yeah,
I mean, paying off debt. We're not,
Yeah, that's right.
not the 18-year-old kid buying a new car, right?
Yeah.
Just a side note here, the one thing about the increase in interest rates that's nice with regards to this cash defeasance is that the higher the interest rates go, that means that the less it will cost to purchase the escrow. So if rates go up from here, it might be less than $2.9 million to buy the escrow. There's some federal tax code issues that come into play here, but generally that would be the way it would work.
It looks to me like this escrow cash flow deals for 6 years approximately. And
Yeah, the escrow would go out for 6 years, but once that escrow is set up, that money is irrevocably pledged towards paying those bonds off.
Good, it's paid off, it's off your books. It's
Yeah, you can't go and break that escrow later and use the money for some other purpose.
Well, you've made paying off debt very interesting.
Any more questions for David while we have him?
No question, it feels like you're moving in the right direction.
Yeah, I think we'll look at other bond issues. We'll look at the Proximity Park ones and see, and then we may tinker around with numbers just to see what, a couple million pledged would do, but then we can just come back on a study session probably and have a more extensive discussion about this.
sounds good, Derek. Thanks for coming down.
Okay.
Dave, and appreciate the work you do for us. And
Oh, sure, my pleasure.
Save us all some money. That's great.
Well, thank you. Again, I wish interest rates would have held and the refinancing would work, but again, as Derek was saying, we couldn't do the refinancing at the time the interest rates were low enough to make a benefit, so we'll just continue to monitor it. All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah. Any public comment today, Janet?
No, sir.
Okay. Consent agenda, consider and approve claim vouchers in the amount of $348,919.11. Franklin County Commission meeting for March 30th, and that was study session, and the meeting for April 4th, or April 4th study session, that was a regular meeting.
Motion to approve.
Second?
Janet?
Commissioner Stottlemyre,
Yeah.
Commissioner Harris,
Yes.
Commissioner Waymire,
Yes.
Chair Dunn.
Yes. Hey, Kenny, you're up for a while.
Okay. I think we have three cases before you today. The first one is a rezoning application for Roger Shoemaker, which was to rezone approximately 13 acres from the A1 Agriculture District to the RE Residential Estate District. This was about a half a mile from another one that we had at the same meeting with the Planning Commission that you have already approved. This one, we were waiting on additional information as part of our regulations. When somebody splits off a small tract of land, we usually want documentation that there's adequate water available for the property so that we're not creating a tract that's going to be unbuildable. This current site had a hand-dug well on it that has previously gone dry. And he had been trying to work with Patch and Well Service to see if they could provide some documentation that sufficient water was available. At the time of the last Planning Commission meeting, I believe Patchen had gone out and had tested that existing hand-dug well, and at that point in time, they were only getting like 2 gallons per minute. We typically want at least 5 gallons per minute to provide sufficient water. And after the Planning Commission had tabled this item for a few months, we finally decided to make a recommendation of denial on the request. I do believe that the property owner, I talked with him just prior to the last Planning Commission meeting. He's still sort of looking at this property and trying to do something here. He just had other projects that were more important to him at that point in time. And so I think the thought was, deny it at this time, and if and when he's able to get that documentation showing that there's sufficient water, then he could come back again in the future, make a new application, and then we could possibly move forward with approval at that point in time. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions on this? Specific action requested is I make a motion to not deny rezoning application number 2111-1935 Shoemaker to rezone approximately 13 acres from an A1 agriculture district to an RE residential estate district.
Make a motion to that extent. Second.
Commissioner Harris,
Yes.
Commissioner Waymire,
Yes.
Commissioner Stottlemyre,
Yes.
Chair Dunn.
Yes. Okay, Kenny.
Okay. This second request is a rezoning for 14.82 acres from the A1 district to the RE district for Daniels. On this request, this is, if this request is approved, what will end up occurring on this property is the owner already has a small area that's already zoned RE that has his existing house on it, and then he also owns sort of most of the rest of the 80 adjacent to it. He's wanting to do a boundary line adjustment, and so this rezoning will basically just rezone the portion of the 80 that will be added into his residential tract, and then the remainder that will all be sort of behind the existing parcel will all end up being sold to the neighbor to the south that has a large agricultural tract. There will be no new parcels created by this division. It just sort of allows him to increase the size of the dwelling site. He was primarily concerned he didn't want an additional house possibly built next to him was the reason why he bought this additional land. So he's going through the process to adjust the boundary so that he can have a little bit more, I guess, protection from development adjacent to him. And then I think the Planning Commission was fine with this, especially as it'll place a large tract of land as one parcel for agricultural purposes. So the recommendation was for approval of the rezoning.
Any questions? For the motion and support of this item would read, I make a motion to approve rezoning application 2202-1945 Daniels to rezone approximately 14.82 acres from an A1 agriculture district to an RE residential estate district and to amend the official county zoning map accordingly.
So move.
Second.
Commissioner Waymire?
Yes.
Commissioner Stottlemyre?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Chair Dunn.
Yes. Okay, Kenny.
Okay. This third item is a request for a special use permit by Sherman Elbert for the operation of a contractor shop and office facility in the RE Residential Estate Zoning District. This property is located on Shawnee Road, just sort of a little ways west of Wellsville. The applicant is proposing to construct a new structure on the property that he would like to use for the storage of his dump truck that he operates, but also is proposing an office for his business in the backside of the structure. According to our current regulations, if this was going to be considered as a home occupation, it would have had to have been fully included with the dwelling portion, but this is a detached accessory structure, and so it doesn't comply with our home occupation section. The Planning Commission did recommend approval of the request for the contractor shop. They did make a couple of minor changes to the conditions that staff had originally proposed. Originally, I had suggested hours of operation from 7 to 10. They went ahead and increased it to 5 a.m. In the morning. Generally, he is getting up early, at least starting the truck, and having to leave early to get to whatever job site he's working at. The other one was condition number 10 was changed. Originally, it was worded that it was going to be, I think, limited to one truck and only to individuals that resided on the property. The Planning Commission just suggested changing that to just limit it to 2 trucks and not necessarily have a restriction on who was employed as long as it fell under that requirement. So I would be happy to answer additional questions if you would like, or I could go over those conditions if you have any questions. And I would say a representative of the applicant is here if you had any question for them. So.
Some of the commissioners asked about the lagoon. Both facilities using the same lagoon?
Yes. Yeah, and I've had conversations with Mr. Crable in regards to connecting into the existing lagoon. I think his main concern that we talked about was just that we don't typically like to have another point where another access is coming into the lagoon. Preferably, it would work best if the effluent from this building would actually flow in using the same line that the house is. And I think my understanding is that the applicant is, they did try to set that up when they were grading the property so that hopefully everything would actually be able to gravity flow into the lagoon in that way. And I think even if we ended up having some kind of issue with that, there are some other options that are available, even if that might be like a pump tank or something like that. So there's some different ways that we could get that taken care of.
Any other questions of Kenny about this? An affirmative motion in support of this item would read, I make a motion to approve special use permit application 2202-1946, Sherman Elbert, for their operation of a contractor shop and an office facility in RE Residential Estate Zoning District.
Move we approve.
Motion approved.
Shannon?
Commissioner Stottlemyre?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Waymire?
Yes.
Chair Dunn.
Yes.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Kenny, for all that. Next item of business, consider awarding a 2022 hot mix asphalt patching and overlay project to Keller Construction Incorporated. Dave?
Commissioners, we sent bid sheets to 3 KDOT approved contractors. We also advertised in the newspaper a couple of different times for this project. And we had bid openings last Friday at the clerk's office. And we received 2 bids. The lowest and best bid was received by, or provided by Kilo Construction in the amount of $810,125.60. And that is to do some heavy patching over about 50 different locations, mostly up in the northeast quadrant of the county, but there are some spots in other parts of the county that will be included in that. We will also be repairing 4 bridge approaches as a part of this. You're all aware of the locations where we have, as the asphalt meets the bridge, there's quite some dips and bumps at these locations. This project will resolve those. And then we're also going to overlay approximately 4 miles of our lowest rated roads. Again, well, about half of it is up in the northeast quadrant on Shawnee and then Vermont Terrace. But we are also going to hit Tennessee Road south of the quarry. We'll take care of one of the lanes there coming out of the quarry on Tennessee, and then also Wheatland Farm subdivision. Those roads have really deteriorated over the last few years. So we will take care of all of those projects in this work, and staff would recommend that we move forward with this project. And I'll also say that Kilo is prepared to start this week yet on this work, so they're ready to get going.
Any questions, Dave?
Who is the other bidder?
The other bidder was Bettis Asphalt, and they were considerably higher than Kilo.
And you may have said this, David, but what did you project this cost to be?
I projected it at over $900,000, close to 950 is what I had estimated, and so I'm very happy with Kilo's bid. It will allow us to utilize some of the money that I had kind of penciled in for this project to do other things. We have any number of bridge-related projects that could be done, and this will allow us to maybe move forward a little bit on some of those projects, so.
Looking on the list, you could probably answer just west of the property we just approved on the rezoning, about 2 miles, there's a bridge. The approach is rough on there on Shawnee.
The bridge going over I-30,
Between
the creek?
something Terrace and, Nebraska Terrace. I think it's right there. West of Nebraska Terrace. Anyways, where it's low and flat, there's a rough.
Is that some of the area that we're, yeah, so
It's
we've
part of
got,
it. All right.
Not specifically a vocal that area.
I think going west is really bad.
yeah,
All right.
One direction for his more.
All right.
yeah, we've got,
If not, they'd be in the neighborhood and it would be
absolutely,
as cheap as it's gonna get.
absolutely, yes.
Okay, any other questions, David? Affirmative motion, read that. I make a motion to award the 2022 hot mix asphalt patching and overlay project to Kilo Construction Company Incorporated in the amount of $810,125.60.
Motion approved.
Second.
Yeah?
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Waymire?
Yes.
Commissioner Stottlemyre?
Yes.
Chair Dunn.
Yes. Next item of business, to consider approving a wage increase for the Public Works Department. David?
Commissioners, on Monday, we discussed the memo that I had prepared for you, and the memo attached to this cover sheet was updated just a little bit with a couple of other options. Just to kind of rehash a little bit, the Public Works Department, which is made up of Road and Bridge, Solid Waste, and the Noxious Weed divisions, each one of those groups has experienced some fairly severe staffing issues. We are down roughly, well, not roughly, we are down 8 employees, and we are having extreme issues with getting applicants, any applicants, to apply for the open positions. Some of these positions have been months and months that they've been open with no activity. The wage analysis memo that I prepared was based on information that the Kansas Department of Transportation put together. They went before the House Committee on Transportation and Public Safety, the Budget Committee, earlier this year, where they did a lot of research and provided that. I utilized that in coming up with our recommendation. Essentially, KDOT has about 33% of their workforce that's eligible to retire in the next 5 years. For us, we're right there as well. We've got about 34%, but most of those are going to happen sooner than 5 years. To break it down a little more, we're expecting to lose 4 of our 9 blade operators and 8 of our 13 equipment operators / truck drivers. So that's 44% of our blade operators, 62% of our equipment and truck drivers. So with that, we are really looking at some staffing shortages. On the blade operator side, we have also just recently replaced 2 of our longtime blade operators. And so if we have to replace 4 more in the next couple of years, that's going to be 67% of our blade operators, which one could argue are the most high profile and most important public works positions that we have. And so we would end up with 6 new folks in those positions and quite possibly be the most inexperienced group of blade operators that the county has seen in probably ever. And it takes several years for a blade operator to get comfortable with the job responsibilities and also the weight of the expectations that we place on those blade operators. And so this analysis, this memo, our recommendation is in an effort to shore up the wage component of our department. According to the KDOT study, we are the lowest paying county for equipment operators without a CDL. We're also the lowest paying county for equipment operators with a CDL. And it's not really even close. And that is, I believe, leading to our shortage of applications. We know throughout the nation, everyone is suffering from that, but, I can look at other counties and they do have some job openings, but they don't have 8 of them. And they're not, I check those on a semi-regular basis and they fluctuate. So they're getting some applicants, they're getting some folks in the door. We would like to be in the ballgame, and I'm happy to talk about any of the details that we discussed on Monday. But my recommendation is to move forward with in the paperwork here, option 3, which is a $2 increase for all public works employees. That would be the road and bridge, noxious weed, and the solid waste. And then an additional $2 an hour increase for all public works employees with the CDL. That CDL is crucial to our organization. Every in-dump truck, every semi-truck, every belly dump, all have to be driven and operated by CDL licensed drivers. And the other part of that is we would like to, new hires, we would like the ability to hire up to 15% above the pay scale minimum rate for those equipment operator positions. I did look at several other options. There's an option 1 here that provides for a $2 increase for only equipment operators. And then anybody with a CDL would get an additional $2 and then the 15% over. That would be doable, but we have that disregards the fact that so many of the other folks that don't have a title that includes equipment operator, they also operate equipment, whether it be mowers or tractors or box trucks, forklifts, all of that stuff. They all operate equipment, skid loaders, all of that. Option 2 would be again, that $2 increase for equipment operators, and then only $1 for folks with the CDL, and then a 10% increase over the minimum pay plus the $1 if they have a CDL. I don't think that option puts enough premium on the CDL license. That is as I mentioned, a very important factor for our department. And due to recent changes in regulations, acquiring a CDL is more difficult, more time consuming, and more expensive. So I believe that my recommended option 3 kind of hits the sweet spot. Based on the conversation on Monday, I did look at what it would be if we increased our starting wages by $1 and $1.50. I kind of rounded it and used a 22% increase and then a 25.5% increase. That got close to the $1 and the $1.50 above those other minimums. Those are all doable, but what that does, it creates compression in the folks that are here already and any new people that we would hire. So there is one scenario where if we've got a light equipment operator that has been here for just a little while, just over a year, making just over $13 an hour, if we do these things and he gets the $2 an hour raise, and then if he's got the CDL, that would give him some more. But if we hire somebody in at 22.5% above the minimum starting wage, they would be actually above that employee that's been here for a little while. And so we would have those wage discrepancies, not a lot of them, but there would be a handful of situations where going above that 15% above the minimum would create those kinds of issues that we would have to resolve. And so I think that those are great ideas, but my recommendation at this point is to go with option 3.
And go ahead and finish.
Well, I just would be happy to answer any of the other questions. We can talk about budget impacts and those sorts of things if you'd like.
I mean, I feel like we were asked to do a little bit of additional analysis just with regard to our equipment operators that don't have the CDL and where they would be starting at. But part of this and part of the vision moving forward is we want to incentivize getting that CDL.
Yes, sir.
And
Definitely.
we've also talked about finding ways to financially contribute to getting the CDL. So I certainly understand there is a gap between, even if we do option 3, there's going to be an appreciable gap between the equipment operators without one and the equipment operators that have the CDL. But again, some of that is to help incentivize that. And the other thing I would add is if we were to do option 3, that makes us very competitive today with other local governments. But 1939 for a CDL. My understanding when compared to the private sector is we're still not, I mean, it's not like this is an extravagant increase that is going to cause, you know, private sector drivers to come, you know.
Yeah, we're still, even at over $19 an hour, we're still $1 or more less than some of the research that I've been able to find where the private industry is paying CDL drivers. I know that, you know, Penny's Concrete, which is listed in here, they're starting their folks at 22 and a half, and then in a short period of time, they're up to 23. That's for somebody that's brand new, that has a CDL. Once they get through their probationary period, they're making $23 an hour, which is still, you know, $3 an hour more than what we would be offering. However, I do believe that, you know, the $2 incentive for folks that we have, and we only have a few road and bridge equipment operators that don't have a CDL. But that $2 an hour, I believe, is a fairly sizable incentive for them to go through the steps with our support to acquire that CDL, to further their careers and give us a little more flexibility. And I fully expect that we'll have others within the Public Works Department that will seek a CDL to help with that. And that I support that, because that again provides us with flexibility in times of need. It gives us more bodies that we can if it's a snowstorm or flooding event and we need somebody to drive a truck out of, you know, that doesn't ordinarily do so, they would have the license and be legally able to do that. And so I wholeheartedly approve this and or recommend this, and would like to see us move forward on this.
Oh, I know, and bear with me, because I know the four of you know this, but I want to say this just for particularly any other county employees who may be listening. You know, why Public Works? Why right now? Franklin County has given increases to multiple departments, and some of those increases have been predicated on finding an efficiency or giving a position up. Some of them haven't, but we've done that with a lot of different departments, multiple times with the sheriff's office. We've done it with ambulance. We've done it with dispatch. We've done it with maintenance. We've done it with community corrections. I mean, we've done this a lot. We've never given any kind of increase like this to Public Works. So I think it's a testament to the leadership we have in that department that we haven't lost more employees that we have. And then secondly, and perhaps more importantly, is how we are going to pay for this and how that allows us to do it right now. So we all know that Public Works got that large FEMA reimbursement. That is money that we have today that can be used for this. And so what we are proposing is to use that FEMA reimbursement to cover the costs for the duration of 2022. And then we will look at budgeting this in our 2023 budget. And as we've discussed, we are looking at, you know, increases across the board for every single county employee in 23. And to come full circle, that was part of our discussion with David Arterberry this morning, is if we can free up operating costs by defeasing certain bonds, then that's money right there that we can put towards this. It's not going to be enough, but it is some. And then if we look at finding additional efficiencies, that'll get us closer. And so we're doing everything that we can to help facilitate this increase. But in Public Works' case, this is just something we feel comfortable recommending right now, just given the situation and the FEMA reimbursement.
Any other questions, David?
I don't find nothing wrong with it. Just, I guess you kind of answered my question in your presentation, that if you had other employees that weren't heavy equipment operators at the time. But they wanted to go ahead and get their CDL so they would be eligible to be a heavy equipment operator, that they would qualify. So if you're hiring somebody and then, and they have a CDL, but they're not gonna be a heavy equipment operator, then they still would be eligible. I'm just asking, I'm not saying it's
Yeah,
wrong.
that is what I am recommending, and the reason for that goes back to, and let me step back even a little further. You know, we staff, ultimately, we have positions available within the Public Works Department across those 3 divisions with just enough staff to do regular everyday items. We don't have a heavy management staff where we have lots of extra managers. We don't have extra equipment operators, extra truck drivers, extra recycling technicians. We try to be as efficient as possible with as few people as possible. But one of the great things about this all being under the Public Works umbrella is that we are able to, in times of need, move people around a little bit, chess pieces, if you will, to take care of the most pressing needs at any given time. If we have, say, a recycling technician that has a CDL, they may not utilize that CDL on an everyday basis, or a chemical applicator may not use that CDL on an everyday basis. But in times of need, if the landfill needs cover material and we need truck drivers to haul that material, we can utilize some of these other employees to help in that endeavor. Or I use the snowstorm this last year, this last winter, we had occasions where we had superintendents and foremen in snow trucks helping with that removal. This would enable us to have other options and more depth to our staff with CDL licensed drivers.
Always going to be cheaper to have a deeper bench, cross-train, and have utility players as opposed to
Yes,
trying to
sir.
staff for every conceivable condition.
Sir.
When would the new wages become effective? I know.
We haven't discussed that, but I would assume that, I don't know if there's time yet to get it into this month's, this April's payroll, or if it would be May, but I would sure like to do it as soon as possible. And we do have the funds available.
I'd be comfortable making a motion, and I will, to approve option 3 of the Public Works Department's wage analysis memo dated April 4 this year.
Okay, we got a motion.
Second.
Janet?
Commissioner Waymire?
Yes.
Commissioner Stottlemyre?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Chair Dunn.
Yes.
I would just like to thank you all for understanding the situation, the gravity of the situation, and taking such a really a monumental step forward for this department and the county as a whole. On behalf of all the staff, I know that they are going to greatly appreciate this, and it's going to be a difference maker. So thank you very much.
I appreciate you taking time to work with us, because it's for sure a challenging world right now.
It is.
And I would echo that. I mean, it's one thing for me to have individual discussions with you and mention kind of a vision, or for, David and I to talk about this casually, but every single time, and literally every single time in my career here, that we've done something like this, you guys have sat there and you've risen to the occasion and you've done exactly what you said you were going to. And that is a privilege that we don't take for granted. I appreciate it. It makes our jobs, it makes our jobs so much easier, helps us get good people in the door. Appreciate the courage it takes to do this. So thank you very much.
Say, appreciate, David spent a lot of time putting together data, really explaining. I mean, it would have been a true statement a year ago to say we need to pay our guys more, we're way behind, let's try this. I mean, it would have been just as true as it is now. But to be able to really explain why we came to that number, how, helps us on this, you know, I remember we were here, we did a wage and compensation study. This is way better than wage and compensation. No employees want that. Again, this is a better process, and it's what we've been going through our departments. We've gone through other departments. We're going to continue doing it. This is way better than that to do it in-house. And like I say, there's to the departments we haven't got to yet, we're going to. This is where we can explain how we got to the answer we did on Public Works, and we're, you know, it's more methodical, I guess. And that's easy to defend, explain, and it's very equitable. So I think,
Data-driven.
yeah, data-driven.
I'll just piggyback on that, what Derek said. We do the continual wage and compensation studies for the whole organization. And I think we'll continue to look at that as inflation hits us and time goes on. Thank you, Public Works people, for being here today, and appreciate what all you do. And David, thank you for putting that together. That was
Appreciate it.
pretty extensive. Ready for staff reports. Derek, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, I don't know that I have much in the way of a staff report. I mean, we've got an employee recognition ceremony coming up that would hope to see you all at. You know, Janet and I continue to work on the budget, and we've had talks just with department heads, and you know, we're having active discussions with Ken Halliburton just about, you know, our JDC and how that's looking, and those discussions will continue to happen. And then, yeah, I think we're sitting here both pretty pleased with where we're at heading into the 23 budget process. So that's really all I have, Roy. Thank you.
Sheriff, got something for us?
Good morning. Just wanted to provide a quick update. As has been mentioned last week, the commission, you guys approved the purchase of a transport van. All the particular equipment that will need to be installed in that has been ordered, and so we're waiting for that to get in to our provider and then the vendor, and then they'll get that all put together, and then we can take delivery of that. Part of when that presentation was that by doing that, it was going to free up the use of funds through our jail trust fund to do some of the other projects that we had. The top two of those, the one that I mentioned was to fix or repair the showers in one section of our jail. So we've reached out to that contractor already, and the vendor to make sure we're getting all updated quotes, and so we can get on their calendar so that we can get that done. So we are moving forward with that. And then the other thing that we've done, we have 2 computers that drive bigger systems in our jail, particularly with our camera system. It takes a computer that's, I don't know how I would word that, but Dustin, if you have questions, could probably explain it better. All I know is it's a lot more expensive to get a computer that does that than a regular computer, so we do have that ordered already to get one of those replaced. We have another one that needs to be replaced, but we've just recently been made aware of a opportunity for a grant, I believe through KDHE, that we believe will help fund that. And what it is, it's for correctional facilities, and it's to help offset COVID expenses. It will not reimburse us for anything that we've already spent, but moving forward, it allows us the opportunity to make some purchases and put some things in place, and some of it will be reimbursement even on staff time. So we are working on that grant project right now so that we can potentially see some funds there to help offset some of the future expenses. And so it's kind of where we are on those things right now. But other than that, I will answer any questions that you may have for me.
Did you have any deputies go up to Lawrence to help out with crowd control?
We did not. We had people lined up for that as per the request, but then I guess they had a a large number of agencies that were able to provide people, so we were one of the agencies that did not end up going up there. So.
Thanks, Joe. Kenny, you got anything else? Casey?
Derek stole my thunder just a little bit, but I was just going to remind you that next week is the employee recognition event, and I want to remind the public that our county offices are going to be closed from 11:30 to 1:30 that day. So that's Thursday, April 14th. Anybody have any questions for me?
Thank you, Casey.
Casey,
Yeah.
is our health department issuing a second booster shot, or do you know?
They are. They're taking appointments for second boosters.
I had a couple people ask
It's
me.
recommended for people over the age of 50.
Okay,
So,
thank
yep,
you.
no problem.
Dustin, you have anything for us today?
Chapter 4, we have to answer any questions the commission has.
Okay, David, anything else?
So just some of the work that the guys have, or our folks have done in the last week. We've spent 3 days clearing brush and debris from around bridges. We could probably keep somebody busy year-round doing that on all of our bridges, but they've hit a good lick here the last week. We also had a couple of large concrete crossroad tubes that we've had some erosion issues, and so we needed to extend those. And so we got that done this week out on Woodson Road west of K33. We also had another crossroad tube on Jackson Road west of Louisiana that we replaced, and we replaced an entrance at 3105 Thomas. And then we've also spent a little bit of time patching our asphalt roads. That's just going to be an ongoing project throughout the spring, with the larger ones being taken care of by Kilo in the coming weeks. Landfill staff, they're getting awfully busy, or busier, I should say. The city of Ottawa had their spring cleanup event this past weekend. And all those roll-offs started arriving probably Friday, yeah. So they started bringing them out on Friday, even though our agreement was to wait until Monday. They just had such an overwhelming response to that they started coming early. But our folks kind of rolled with it and made it happen. They're going to be busy the rest of the month with that. They're really looking forward to May Day, which is the end of free dump season. So that is, we're looking forward to that. So that's all I have. Just also as a reminder, I'll be up in Kansas City next Wednesday for the KDOT local consult meeting, where they'll talk about the bipartisan infrastructure plan. And so hopefully we'll come away with some good information there on funding sources.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Just really quick to piggyback on what Derek said, our department heads are reviewing their budget, putting their numbers in right now, getting those ready. Derek and I will then take time in early May and meet with the department heads in preparation for our study sessions, and I think we're still on track to have those in the beginning of June. So we'll plan on your study sessions in June for the budget. So.
Paul, do you want to update us on?
Morning, Commissioners. First, from an economic development standpoint, also want to express my compliments and appreciation for what you just did for your employees. Many of us in the room can remember back in 40 years ago when inflation was similar to what we're seeing now, and employers had to just annually pay 5, 6, 7% raises just to keep employees. And we've been blessed for decades now without having to deal with this kind of inflation. And some folks maybe don't recall those days, but I certainly do. And so I know it's not always politically easy to do what you just did, but I tip my hat to you. And I hope that a lot of our industry, and they have been, and I hope others will, continue to look at the wages they're paying. And if you don't think it's an issue, go buy a bag of groceries and you'll find out real fast how the world's changed. So I tip my hat to you and for the leadership from Derek and David. I think that's outstanding. Proximity Park is always something people want to know what's happening, and I'm happy to report we've really had a big uptick in the last 4 or 5 days. Since Friday, I've received 4 new requests for packets of information on Proximity Park. I'm going to respond to 2 of them. The other 2 were so large as far as what they needed for land. One of them had twice the land that we have available was their minimum requirement. Some of them need rail, there's a lot of factors involved. I don't not respond lightly, but the 2 of these were just not going to be a fit for our community for various reasons. And I can't get into great detail, but just would not have been a good fit. But I did visit with Derek and the city about that before I make those decisions. But we've got 2 more new active prospects that just came in, actually since Monday. And I've got the information put together to submit on one of them today, and I'll probably submit on the other one tomorrow. The deadlines are really about 4-day turnaround, so it's a pretty quick turnaround. We also have the potential for a site visit later this month on another lead that we're working. That would not be in Proximity Park, but it would be in the county, so that's exciting. And so the activity's really picked up. That's encouraging. I'm anxious to hear more from Topeka as the legislature insight. I know another good thing is they're working on, from a workforce standpoint, on some liability issues for getting younger kids in the workforce for work study and that type of thing. And that will help us tremendously as people learn on the job, if that's a job they want or not, at an earlier age. Kind of like when we were young and started working very early, and liability wasn't something anybody talked about. But that's a quick synopsis on Proximity Park. And we do have the Child Care Awareness meeting on Monday night right here in these chambers, and everybody in the community is invited to come and participate in that. That's a critical issue for our workforce and our employers as we at FCDC work to support recruitment and retention in our existing industry. That's a very key factor. So I'm looking forward to that meeting on Monday night. Happy to answer any questions.
I think it's maybe obvious, but to some of you, but I'll say it anyway. Even these leads that we can't respond to because we either don't have enough land or don't have rail access, that's still a very good thing for us because it shows that industries want to locate in this area. And it means that they may end up right up the road, but they're taking a spot right up the road, which means less spots up the road, and it helps funnel some of these maybe slightly smaller companies that still want to be in the area. It's just it makes us that more marketable for them. So, I 4 leads in like 3 days, 5 days.
Pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, that's a good sign. So hopefully it keeps up.
Yep. Well, it could slow down a little bit. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Commissioner's report.
Not a lot. I did go to Rantoul the other night. David was there and gave a presentation on you might speak a little on that, what you did on that presentation.
Sure. So through the new municipal demolition assistance program that we have that you all approved several months ago, I've been trying to go around to all the small communities in the county to present this information. I've been to Rantoul and Richmond and Princeton already. And Monday night I had the opportunity to speak to the Rantoul City Commission. I think that of the 3 that I've presented to so far, they seem very gung-ho and ready to go on this. So I expect to really see some movement from them yet this year. They had good questions about the process, and I thought we had a really good conversation about it. I encouraged them to, once they make the decision, to reach out before they start down the path, and that I would help them with the application and provide them any background information that they may need through that process. I also intend to kind of link them up with maybe the city of Ottawa so that they have a better understanding of what the total process is to condemn and go through that. And so, yeah, it was a good conversation, and I plan to be in front of the remaining communities in the coming days and months.
You know, one thing I want to mention, that to show how codes court works in these, three of these communities he's talking about have it. They have not had one case go to codes court yet, but they've had several cases taken care of. I mean, the people take, just because they know it's there, and if they don't do something, it's gonna go on to there. They've had several, and they've attested, as he heard the conversation, they've had several issues taken care of just because they have access to a codes court. I know it's a pain if it goes on, I know but so far, they haven't had any go on. They've all been settled before they got to there, so that's just a testament to maybe how that could work, even if we go that direction, you know?
Well, and I've asked Kenny to look into the county potentially tying into that. I mean, I don't know what the mechanics would look like. We'll find out, but I suspect these small towns wouldn't object to the county contributing financially to some of the costs of that. And then if it's possible, and I believe it probably is, just to share in a joint codes court. So just know that's something we're exploring behind the scenes.
So far, I think I ain't gonna say only, but it looks like the main cost they've had is just the person that is the official that goes out and does all the meeting with the people and handing out the papers and seeing the letters getting taken care of. That is their main so far. And I think both the three of those little cities has been happy with it, you know. And the only other thing I want to give credit to people when they do things. I don't know how the whole program works. I just kind of, I knew it was happening, but I didn't know who was doing it. But the DC out here has been donating to these smaller towns a lot of commodities, not food, but other types of things, clothing and detergents and all kinds of stuff. How it comes to that, I don't know. But allowing them to kind of almost have a rummage sale that they're doing and raising. I know Rantoul's using their money to put it in their parks and recreation funds, so I don't know how it come about, but you got to give a thank you to somebody like that that's doing that. And instead of a lot of those things, I've seen those big companies that goes in the dumpsters, basically is what happens, even good stuff. So I'm glad to see they're using it to help the little communities out. So, and like I said, most of their meeting down there was on their code stuff and no other major things going on. But that's all I got.
All right, cool.
Did Elizabeth Layton Center meeting last week. Pretty much all's well. Labor continues, like everywhere, to be an issue. They did a wage adjustment just recently. Last month had a slight tick towards positive as far as the lost gain on employees, but that wage adjustment's new. And other than that, like I say, struggling with labor like everyone else.
Going with what Don said, I got a call from a county commissioner in Coffee County talking about codes, starting a codes court for their county somehow too, their problem people. So it's a kind of a common problem out there. I went to the FCDC meeting last morning. All three of us were there for the meeting. It was like Paul said, it was kind of a KU hangover type deal, and everybody was still celebrating, I guess, KU's win. Some things Paul did talk about was uptick in membership now, and it's going real well. And he didn't mention this morning, but still shooting for 100 members, and that's a good goal. He talked about some investments, not only in Ottawa, but also about investors in apartment places, and that's something for multi-family units is some interest out there, and and a definite need for, good housing. Paul mentioned that a broker approached City of Ottawa about being a broker for Proximity Park, and they declined the presentation, and they felt like kudos for Paul that he was doing a good job doing it, so they didn't need an intermediator to help them out at this time. Ryan Cobb, he talked about some after-school stuff with Auto Memorial Auditorium and Auto Recreation Commission to have stuff there at the rec center or some more stuff for kids to do and a benefit package for kids to do some outside the school activities and that sort of thing. Other than that, I don't have anything else. Next week we have our luncheon, appreciation luncheon and award presentation next Thursday. We've got a meeting on Wednesday, and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Roy, I need an executive session for.
I guess we're not going to adjourn. Okay.
Yeah, executive session to discuss a potential land acquisition pursuant to the COMA exception, allowing for preliminary discussions of acquisition of real property to include the county commissioners, the county administrator, and the public works director for 15 minutes.
Anybody want to make that motion?
Motion approved.
Second?
Okay, we'll take about 2 minutes, then we'll go into executive session.
Need to vote on that?
Oh. Let's
All
have
in
a vote
favor?
on it.
All in favor is fine.
All in favor, say aye.
All right.
Aye.
Out of executive session at 10:04, no action taken. Now I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second. We're adjourned.
Thank you all.